The Dead Have Never Died by Edward C. Randall. Read for you by BlueFriend in beautiful BC. Chapter 20. The Power of Suggestion. The inhabitants of this invisible world influence and in some measure control the thought and conduct of every individual. They are more progressive than we, and having no incentive to accumulate money, they devote themselves to the acquisition of knowledge. They delve deeply into the forces of nature, and dealing with material in greater refinement, make from time to time discoveries, some of which are utilized on the physical plane. Faraday, who first made practical the force known as electricity, did not cease his investigations with dissolution, but has been a potent factor in its development through suggestion to those who devote their time to the utilization of that force. Raphael did not cease to portray upon canvas his wonderful creations, nor did Michelangelo lose his ability to chisel marble into forms of beauty when he ceased to inhabit this plane. The years that have elapsed since they went on have been years of opportunity and progress. Mozart, Beethoven, and all the other musicians who gave us those great compositions, have they gone down into the silent and relentless darkness, or have they continued their work, impressing on others from day to day new music that enriches the world? Milton, Dryden, Pope, Goldsmith, Moore, Wordsworth, Burns, Browning of modern times, Seneca, Pliny the Elder, Plutarch, Epictetus, Tacitus, and Cervantes of an earlier period, were all their wonderful writings and philosophies produced without suggestion from the master minds in the more advanced spheres? I know this one fact, that people in the afterlife are so close, so in touch with our thoughts, that it is difficult for anyone to say that this or that is the product of his own intellect. Progress owes much to the invisible. Robert G. Ingersoll, well known to me in the afterlife, speaking on this subject, said, "Let me give the most remarkable illustration of spirit suggestion. The immortal Shakespeare. Neither of his parents could read or write. He grew up in a small village among ignorant people on the banks of the Avon. There was nothing in the peaceful, quiet landscape on which he looked, nothing in the low hills, the undulating fields, nothing in the lazy flowing stream to excite the imagination, nothing in his early life calculated to sow the seeds of the subtlest and sublimest thought. There was nothing in his education or lack of education to account for what he did. It is supposed that he attended school in his home village, but of that there is no proof. He went to London when young, and within a few years became interested in Blackfriars Theatre, where he was actor, dramatist, and manager. He was never engaged in a business counted reputable in that day. Socially, he occupied a position below servants. The law described him as a sturdy vagabond. He died at 52. How such a man could produce the works which he did has been the wonder of all time. Not satisfied that one with such limited advantages could possibly have written the masterpieces of literature, it has been by some contended that Bacon was the author of all Shakespeare's comedies and tragedies. It is a fact to be noted that in none of this man's plays is there any mention of his contemporaries. He made reference to no king, no queen, poet, author, sailor, soldier, statesman, or priest of his own period. He lived in an age of great deeds, in the time of religious wars, in the days of the Armada, the Edict of Nantes, the massacre of St. Bartholomew, the victory of Lepanto, the assassination of Henry III of France, and the execution of Mary Stuart, yet he did not mention a single incident of his day and time. The brain that conceived Timon of Athens was a Greek in the days of Pericles and familiar with the tragedies of that country. The mind that dictated Julius Caesar was an inhabitant of the eternal city when Caesar led his legions in the field. The author of Lear was a pagan, of Romeo and Juliet an Italian who knew the ecstasies of love. The author of those plays must have been a physician, for he shows a knowledge of medicine and the symptoms of disease. A musician, for in the Two Gentlemen of Verona he uses every musical term known to his contemporaries. He was a lawyer, for he was acquainted with the forms and expressions used by that profession. He was a botanist, because he named nearly all known plants. He was an astronomer and a naturalist, and wrote intelligently upon the stars and natural science. He was a sailor, or he could not have written The Tempest. He was a savage, and trod the forest's silent depths. He knew all crimes, all regrets, all virtues, and their rewards. He knew the unspoken thoughts, desires, and ways of beasts. He lived all lives. His brain was a sea on which the waves touch all the shores of experience. He was the wonder of his time and of ours. Was it possible for any man of his education and experience to conceive the things which he did? All the Shakespearean works were, beyond a doubt, the product of his pen, but the conceptions, the plays, the tragedies were the work of many brains, given Shakespeare by spirit suggestion. He was but the sensitive instrument through which a group of learned and distinguished scholars, inhabitants of many lands when in earth life, gave to posterity the sublime masterpieces of the Bard of Avon. The writings of Swedenborg were produced in the same way. Sardo wrote by spirit suggestion, and as a fact, many of the best works of so-called great men have been, in part, the action of the minds of those beyond our earthly plane, who, working in conjunction with man, do something for the uplift of the human race. Knowing as I do the potent influence of spirit people upon the world's thought, and how in every way they seek to enlighten us as to the change called death, I have wondered what spirit impressed this poem on a mortal mind. The poem reads, as the faint dawn crept upwards, grey and dim, he saw her moves across the past to him. Her eyes, as they had looked in long-gone years, tender with love and soft with thoughts of tears. Her hands, outstretched as if in wonderment, nestled in his and rested there, content. Dear wife, he whispered, what glad dream is this? I feel your clasp, your long-remembered kiss, touches my lips as when you used to creep into my heart, and yet this is not sleep. Is it some vision that with night will fly? No, dear, she answered, it is really I. Dear heart, it is you, I know, but I knew not the dead could meet us so. Bodied as we are, see how like we stand. Like, she replied, in form and face and hand. Silent a while, he held her to his breast, as if afraid to try the further test. Then, speaking quickly, must you go away? Husband, she murmured, neither night nor day. Close to her then she drew his head, trembling. I do not understand, he said. I thought the spirit world was far apart. No, she replied, it is not now, dear heart. Quick, hold fast my hand, lean on me so, cling to me, dear, 'tis but a step to go. The white-faced watchers rose beside the bed. Shut out the day, they sighed, our friend is dead. This is a substantial description of what is actually occurring from hour to hour in the change as the individual catches his breath in the etheric atmosphere, and his vision is clarified as a result of throwing off the flesh tissue. He sees spirit people, like in form and face and hand, so natural, so unlike what one has been led to believe that is hard to understand. But let us remember that the change is a natural one, that all nature's changes are for our good, planned by the Master Intelligence, in order that our opportunity for development may be increased and we may grow more godlike. Knowing this, we can meet the dawn of the new conditions with confidence and courage. Man is a part of nature, his intelligence being developed and refined to a greater or lesser degree. He is an integral portion of that force which we term God. It is not necessary that we bend the knee and worship at any shrine or altar, but knowing that we are part of that intelligent force which holds dominion in nature, it is incumbent upon us to do no act unworthy of our position, to live where the best thoughts grow day by day, to strive to maintain the integrity and standards set for us, and ultimately to do our utmost to increase that force called good or God. In all ages, man has pursued happiness by countless paths and innumerable roads. Some have thought that within the hollow crown that rounds the mortal temples of a king, it kept its seat. Some have thought that on the throne it sat and smiled, and have waded through seas of blood to reach it. Some have thought that behind the walls of splendor it made its home. Others, despairing of finding it there, have pictured a world beyond where happiness could be found perfect and complete. But let us realize that there is only one royal road which leads to happiness, and that is to practice the plain, old, yet incomparable maxim, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." These sacred words, uttered in different form 600 years before the alleged birth of Christ, fell from the lips of the great Confucius and are today found in nearly every sacred volume of the world. Chapter 21. Never a secret in the world. There never has been, and never can be, a secret in this world. This is an entirely new proposition, which, if understood, would prevent much crime and unhappiness, and would enrich all mankind. There has always been an idea that many things can be done secretly, that, for instance, one can lie and it will never be made known, and that one can cheat and defraud others and not be found out, or that a thief can enter a home without detection, that immortality can be carried on without society being the wiser. All these wrongs are being done under the belief that they can be accomplished secretly, and most of them are done in this manner so far as our world is concerned. Mankind has been taught that God sees all and knows all, but men and women do not believe it, otherwise crimes would not be committed and the moral code would not be violated. Pride and the speech of people have a great influence on conduct. Now, suppose the thief knew that if he took the property of another, his act would, beyond peradventure, be exposed in the morning paper, and he would be under immediate arrest. With conviction absolutely certain, would he commit the crime? Suppose a businessman or captain of finance knew that if he formed unlawful combination and defrauded the public, he would certainly be imprisoned. Suppose men and women knew that violation of the moral code would be known and censured within the hour. Would wrong and crime go rampant throughout the land? Men and women do these acts in belief that they are discreet enough to cover them, that they will never be known. Such men have little idea that every act, and I will go further, everything is known by those in the afterlife who are interested in our welfare. But they are far away, one says. No, they touch elbows and walk beside us day by day. One cannot comprehend God as a personality witnessing each act and knowing the individual thought of over 400 million people, but one can comprehend the fact that the afterlife is inhabited by those who have passed through the earth life, that they improve their condition by helping those in need of assistance, that by their silent suggestion through the subconscious brain they try to aid us. No, They touch elbows and walk beside us day by day. One cannot comprehend a God as a personality witnessing each act and knowing the individual thought of over 400 million people, but one can comprehend the fact that the afterlife is inhabited by those who have passed through the earth life, and that they improve their condition by helping those in need of assistance, that by their silent suggestion through the subconscious brain they try to aid us. They keep in touch with our thought and are silent witnesses of all the wrong in the physical world. I do not mean that all the inhabitants of the afterlife know each wrong act. What I do mean is that every man, woman, or child has loved ones in the afterlife who take a deep interest in his or her welfare, be their position high or low. In other words, the ties of blood, the bonds of love, the interest of friends are not severed by death or dissolution. As the father, mother, brother, sister, wife, or child know by experience the awful effect of wrongdoing and are able to come about us and witness our conduct, they note our mental vibrations and so read our thoughts. Is it not the most natural thing in the world that they should try to prevent or stop our evil acts? If mankind knew this fact, that nothing is ever really done in secret, would wrong be committed at all? Men and women are restrained often by pride. They only stray from the path of rectitude when they think that they go in secret. Teach men the truth, and it will help to make the home sacred. To empty the prisons, it will add more than any other one thing to the sum total of human happiness. Again, the churches teach in substance that though our sins be scarlet, yet we can become white as snow, and that there is forgiveness for all sin. One sect goes so far as to vest that power in the church. The practical result of such teaching has been, and is, to license wrong and crime. Men do wrong under the impression that in some way they will escape the just consequences of their wrongful act. I have said before, and I will say again, that the world is not a jumble, but it is controlled by law. For every effect there is a cause, and that cause is governed by law. Every act produces a result. Every thought, being material, creates a condition about us, and is retained in one of the 16 or more million cells of the brain. When, therefore, anyone goes out of his life and enters the etheric, where everything, the good and the bad, is intensified beyond mind measure, the storehouse of the brain is opened, and he or she is confronted with the record which has been made. Nothing is forgotten. The good get reward, otherwise courage would be lost. Punishment for wrongdoing is terrible beyond words. Everyone must bear his own burden. Everyone must meet again every wrongful act, and make in ways that are provided complete restitution. This is very difficult, and the way is very long. One who believes that the world of men marks the beginning or the end has no more comprehension of the true situation than a mole following the path which it has made under dead grass in the meadowlands knows of the physical world. I have been told two most important truths by those who have honored me by their teaching: that there never has been and never can be a secret in the world, that man has no savior but himself, and that the wrong which he does he must undo. Whatever obligation he contracts, he must meet. I have had other teachings that have appealed most strongly to reason. One of these is, do not worry, but fit yourself to meet situations from day to day. The obstacles which we meet are of our own creation. The troubles we have are of our own making. If we possessed all wisdom, we would then be gods, and not make mistakes. No one is perfect in this world, or has reached full development, and until such time, everyone, as a result of lack of wisdom and judgment, will continue to make mistakes and create obstacles over which he will stumble. But that is not misfortune. Mistakes are necessary, and it is only by creating and overcoming them that we gain wisdom, and know how to avoid the same conditions again. They are the stepping stones to the heights of understanding, and they are good for us. Let us meet them cheerfully and appreciate the lesson each teaches. Ordinary errors ought not to cause us anxiety, for it is only through them that we make progress. A just and full appreciation of this fact would take from the mind the useless burden of worry. Calamity is nature's spur. Trials are not only essential, but are disciplinary. Misfortune is opportunity. Other desirable things which I have learned from this unusual source are: we have no right to burden others with our sorrows. All nature is optimistic, all tending toward good. As one thinks, so he is. There are some men so pessimistic that given the choice of two evils, they insist upon taking both. They see no good in anything, and are ever looking upon the dark side. Anticipating misfortune. The mind is a wonderful force, its influence extending much further than we have any idea of, and one can do very much to make the world happier. On the other hand, one can do much to make others unhappy by throwing upon them one's own mental condition, and many people, by force of habit, do this, unmindful of the result. I recall, not long ago, a morning in the springtime. The sun was warm, the air balmy. Dandelions bared their velvety bosoms to the sky. Tulips and daffodils fringed the borders. The lawns were carpeted with green. Birds had returned from the south and were building nests and singing. It was a morning when a temperament that could not respond to the environment was poor indeed. As I stepped out upon the avenue on my way to my office, I saw a prominent citizen approaching. His head was bent. His eyes were fixed on the stone walk. His mouth was set. Dissatisfaction and unrest showed in his face. The impression, as his mental condition touched my own, was most depressing. I knew the man well. Involuntarily turning as I met him, I said, "Don't take that down into the city today." "Take what?" he answered quickly. "The countenance you are wearing this morning," I replied. He looked at me in amazement for a moment and inquired, "What is the matter with it?" I spoke with kindness, saying, "It is full of discontent, unrest, and worry. You look at war with all mankind. You will make miserable every man, woman, and child who sees you with your present expression." "Have I made that impression on you?" he asked. "Yes," I answered. "I would not like to create that impression," was his reply. "I have never thought that my mental attitude affected those with whom I came in contact. That's a new idea to me." "Have you observed the morning?" I asked. "No," he answered. "I've been so engrossed in thought that I have not observed the day." I then said, "I want you to forget the things you're worrying about. Look up and see how beautiful the world is, and feel what a privilege is ours to be a part of it. Listen to the songs of the robins, watch the bluebirds, respond to the flowers, get in harmony with it all, and as we meet those we know, greet them cordially and watch the effect on them and on yourself." He walked for a little way in silence. The suggestion was working. His jaws were relaxed, his frown had left his face, his eyes had kindled, his lips smiled. With his expression wholly changed, he walked a different man, and as he met his friends and acquaintances with a cheery "Good morning," his joy and happiness radiated. Others caught the charm of his personality. The world was happier, and so was he. Chapter 22. Mental Activity. Thoughts are things. If not things, they are nothings, which is tantamount to saying that thought does not exist. If you design a house, your drawing is an image of the thought house which was in your mind before you made the draft. You see a certain vessel which is used for holding water, and you name the vessel a bucket. The image of that bucket is in your mind, and when you hear the word bucket, your mind recognizes the vessel, either because you've seen it or heard it described. You use the word bucket in the hearing of 1,000 people who have seen or known the same bucket, and every person of that 1,000 will perceive in his mind the exact image of that bucket. The word bucket is not in the image of the object, but, when spoken, refers the mind of the hearer who has seen it to the image of the bucket as it is indelibly printed on or in his psychic ether. Drawings are things. Images are things. Emblems of other things. From these drawings, images, and emblems of things, the mind constructs the particular thing in psychic ether, and this psychic house or bucket or other thing is the thought, and wrought in material form is the shape and the counterpart of the spiritual thought. It is absolutely impossible for the mind to be inactive for one single moment, whether in sleep or awake. The matter composing the mind is in a state of constant activity, so intense in its vibratory action that it is impossible for that substance to be inactive for one instant. The brain in which ideas are fashioned is a perfect machine in constant motion. The creations or product emanating from such instrument are never visible unless physically clothed, and only a very few mental conceptions ever find expression in this world of ours. The mental products from millions of minds in active operation vary, as do the products that come from the machines in the countless factories. The mental emanations flowing from a brain highly developed appear to spirit people as lines of force extending and undulating from the soul center. The longer those lines of force, the more active the substance composing them, and the lighter their appearance. The electric or gas light, as we use that term, is simply burning substance in a high degree of activity, and the greater the activity, the more perfect the light. The mental emanations going out from great generous souls are light. Those from one selfish and cruel are slow in action and necessarily have a dark appearance. It's like comparing the flame of a tallow candle to the incandescent lamp. Thoughts again may emanate from a brain so undeveloped as to give out but little light, in reality casting a shadow in the etheric atmosphere. There are millions of those lines of force or emanations going out from mentalities continuously, and they make up what has ordinarily been termed the auras of individuals. Much talk of the aura surrounding each individual has been practically meaningless because of the failure to comprehend that mind is matter and that thoughts have form and substance. Admitting this hypothesis, we can see at once how every individual is surrounded with thought emanations that go out from his mentality as perfume goes out from the rose. It may be sweet and intoxicating, or it may be sickly and offensive. There is scarcely a state in which man finds himself that has not its counterpart in vegetable life. Those emanations or lines of force are perfectly visible to the inhabitants in the afterlife, who know from actual observation the character as well as the thought of the individual. We, in the physical world, not having eyes developed to catch those emanations because of their very high potency, we know very little concerning them. If we knew, our knowledge would revolutionize the conduct of men. But we feel the effect of those lines of force when we come in contact with them. Instinctively we feel the personality of others. Thought emanations from others, both in and out of the physical body, make an impression upon our subconscious brain, and these, with our own suggestions, are continually entering our brain machine. They are weighed and are either rejected or accepted and are expressed, so that there is a continual taking in and throwing off in our mental operations. It is a process as natural as the heart action and as little understood. Few people are able to tell the process through which and by which they each reach their conclusions, but mental lines of force strike our mentality. They come in contact with our own emanations, so that, unconsciously, we receive an impression and arrive at a conclusion as to the personality of another. The first impression that we unconsciously get is always the one which should guide us. These thought lines, as I have said, have color depending upon their length, and as there's no stagnation in nature, their general condition is constantly changing. That is to say, they are progressing toward the light or becoming darker. As the individual self reaches a high state of spirituality with good thoughts and aspirations, the graceful lines of force reach far. The personality is lighted up, and we feel the presence of a good man or a good woman. The ignorant who live for self, with uncontrolled temper and unlicensed passion, have little spiritual development. They live in darkness day by day, and their surroundings are exactly in accord with their mental state, for every man occupies just that position in society which he is qualified to occupy. That must be so, or the law of cause and effect would be a failure. So we see that in our daily life we are creating a condition about us and around us, spiritually as well as physically. We are making a physical condition in which we live from day to day, and a spiritual one as well. And into the latter we pass at the moment of dissolution. When divested of the flesh garment, we continue in just that mental state which we have created and from which there is no escape, until we, by great individual effort, change our mental state and acquire new and higher aspirations, and thereby create a better environment. There are some individuals who bring into a home peace, happiness, and joy. There are other pessimistic individuals who cast a gloom wherever they go. In the presence of the last named, the laughter of children stops. There are individuals whose personality is so offensive that we avoid them whenever possible. The physical outlines clothing the personality are indicative also of the true character of the individual. Men living on the earth plane are, with our present understanding of these things, very apt to be judged according to their outward or physical appearance. In the afterlife, divested of the flesh garment, character is apparent to all those with whom intercourse is held, and many will stand before the mirror of nature in their nakedness. In truth, our personality has always been visible to the inhabitants of the afterlife, because they too are living a material existence, and being etheric, all etheric or mental action is visible to them when they come within the zone of our thought action. The very proper desire of mankind is to enrich itself, but the difficulty is that we have yet to learn of what true riches consist. True, money is necessary during this little journey on earth, but true wealth consists of happiness, and that is found in leading a chaste, upright, just life, in doing something for others, and being true to oneself. Lives of that character grow rich indeed, and they do not have to wait until the afterlife to enjoy the wealth so gathered. Upon the other hand, the captain of finance who, with ruthless hands, has taken from others what they have earned and has accumulated a great hoard, having no lofty aspirations, he goes out into the next world a pauper indeed, for his better self has not been developed, and the lines of force that have emanated from his mentality are short and dark. Those who pass out, having led fairly good lives, find a condition where it is light, a condition of their own making. In the change they seldom lose consciousness, but pass into an environment where, to the limit of their capacity, everything is understood, where, without the loss of a day, they're ready to continue to labor, to comprehend the economy of nature's law, to better understand their duties and their responsibilities, and to continue to a part of the active force. Those who have led narrow and selfish lives find just the condition that they have been from day to day making, and that condition is a grossly material one. If you were to build a house without windows, how could you expect light to penetrate? The position of men in the state referred to is not one to be desired. If the world would only learn that true wealth and happiness are found in doing the best we can under all circumstances, and that wealth, righteously gathered, is not only enjoyed here, but is taken into the afterlife, the ambition and the desire of humanity would be changed in an instant. It is a misfortune to have been wrongly educated, and especially to have been taught that money can buy happiness, or that money is the one goal that we all should seek. A spirit, speaking on this general subject, has said to me, "You all give off an aura, and if you knew the conditions emanating from some people, you would very quickly eject them from your house. In those whose lives are not strictly upright, we find the aura very bad. It's mixed, cloudy, and confused. The emanations of people of good health vary in shade from white, pale pink, to rose color. When the auras approach the dark colors, browns, grays, and blacks, we know that the person is wrong in some way. Now this aura is influenced by passions such as hate, envy, malice, evil speaking, anger, and when one sets out to do an injury to another, let me assure you that he injures himself far more than that other person. The power of thought for good or ill is demonstrated in various ways. Let a number of persons concentrate an evil thought upon another, and the effect will be found most disastrous. Again, when a band of people concentrate their thought upon one who is ill, they thereby send him vital force and strength and power. The result is restoration to health. This is the basis of the health that comes through Christian Science practice. It is all the result of concentrating the lines of force at a specified point. The result is good or bad depending upon the character of the force that is projected and concentrated at a given point. I have been told that a clean, highly developed thought goes out into the ether with the appearance of a searchlight, starting from a central point and radiating through space. Mind is matter, and thoughts are things, and so wonderfully active is the operation that we are continually forming our mental creations in such refined substance. With all our development, and it has been great, we are able to hear only a few of the sounds that vibrate in our atmosphere. With all our achievements, we are unable to see motion except that it be slow in movement and in physical garment. On this subject, one said to me, "We can also read the thoughts of another, conditions being favorable, as readily as you can gain a knowledge of the character of symbols of a language not your own. Thoughts, being motions of the mind, assume specific and definite forms, and when distinct in the mind, can be clearly perceived and understood by any spirit who is in sympathy with the mind in which they are generated." End of chapter 22.